I'm Julie Webb of LitCentric.com. Thank you so much for your interest and your purchase of Stand Tall, Molly Lou Melon. This is a fantastic book. I remember discovering this book many years ago and being really excited about it. There's a lot of great things you can do with this book. And today we're going to take a look at the bridge chart that we featured in our LitCentric Radio episode. Now, if you remember, we talked about story pyramids in episode 7 with caps for sale. And so if you want to review what a story pyramid is, I suggest listening to episode 7. And in this case, we're using a story pyramid to actually analyze the story for the author's message. So the deeper meaning and all the inferring the students have to do to understand some of the things that are going on in the book. So before, with caps for sale, we used this structure as a basic retelling kind of graphic organizer, and now we're using it for deeper analysis. So it's pretty great when you can use the same tool for multiple things. So in this case, what you're going to download today in your lesson are these bigger sticky notes, and I like to put them on 2 different colors because they have 2 very different purposes. So these first ones here, I have them set up for us to take a look at, but with my students, I would actually read the book with them, do the text-dependent questions, and either the same day or the next day, we would talk through and actually map out the story together. So as we have that discussion and they let me know some of the parts of the story that they're remembering, I go ahead and put the notes on or have students come up and put the notes on. So we do that part together. But for our purposes, I already have it done for us. So in this case, we have Molly Lou Melon was short, had buck teeth, a throaty voice, and was fumble-fingered. That's how our story begins. And as you probably recognize in the book, each of those things, her height, her voice, her teeth, all those things, they take up several pages of the book. And in this case, we're not dedicating several sticky notes to those pieces of information or those details. Because if we did that, we would have probably 8,000 sticky notes on our chart, and it would be too much for kids to process. And because we're not trying to retell the story, we're just trying to sum it up and get the deeper meaning, I just went ahead and basically summarized those all on one sticky note. And we've done that throughout the piece so that we're not managing too much information. After we learned about Molly, we learned that she had to move away and started a new school. Then in the story, she met Ronald, and he calls her names and teases her and treats her terribly. And then we learn some of the things that Molly Lou does in response to that. So she runs between his legs during football, she stacks pennies, she quacked, and Ronald Durkin felt very foolish. You said it with me. At the climax here, Molly made that beautiful snowflake and all the children oohed and awed, and even Ronald Durkin was impressed. So that's really the most exciting kind of piece of the story and leads to the turning point where now Ronald gives Molly Lou Melon a stacking penny for her teeth, and he actually smiled at her. Later, the story concludes with Molly writing to her grandma to let her know that she was right all along and all her advice was wonderful. So once I've retold that with the students, then we're going to start talking about what does the author really want us to know? Why did the author put this information in the story? What can we learn from it for our own lives and our own experiences? So again, as always with LitCentric Radio lessons, these are only suggestions. You do not have to use the pre-printed sticky notes. You can definitely just have the discussion with your students and write it along. But in this case, you've got examples, so it gives you an idea of maybe what some of the language and ideas that you want students to generate. So let's go ahead and map those out. So first, when Molly Lou is really short, she has buck teeth, and her voice is kind of croaky, that gives us information about her, that she's really unique, maybe she's a little awkward, she's different, she's unusual. So those are the messages that we're getting from the author about this character. Later, when she moves away to a new school, some of the things that she's feeling, she's scared, she's uneasy, she's nervous, she's apprehensive, maybe she feels lonely. Now, some of these words my students would come up with, like scared or lonely or nervous. Not very often would they come up with a word like apprehensive. That's definitely my word that I'm adding onto the chart, so that anytime they hear words like nervous and scared, maybe that word apprehensive will come up and they'll use it on their own, and now that word will become part of their vocabulary. Molly Lou met Ronald and he teased her. This is an example of taunting and bullying that happens in this story. It's not really about Ronald, it's about the experience and how terrible that feels. Here's Molly's response. She runs between his legs, stacks those pennies. She's triumphant. She overcame these situations, and she's starting to fit in, okay? Especially because the other kids are impressed with her, which leads us to that climax of she made that snowflake and all the kids were impressed. So now she's really impressive. The kids were amazed and they appreciated her. And now we know actually Ronald did too. So later when Ronald gives her that stacking penny, the author wants us to see that this is ultimate acceptance, it's understanding and friendship, and it's a kind gesture. Okay? And finally, with Grandma and that advice she gave, Molly's feeling really satisfied and confident, proud, and grateful to her grandmother. So as you can see, we could retell a story and say the things that happened, but we would be missing an entire other layer that we really want our students to have experience with, because eventually they're going to have to do this all on their own as readers and writers. I hope you liked our chart today. Thank you for listening and subscribing to LitCentric Radio. I hope you'll share some of the success stories that you have in your classroom with bridge charts and our writing tasks. You can find me on social media at LitCentric, and please use the hashtag LitCentric Radio so that we can find some of those great examples. Have a great day at school.